welcome everybody. It's really great to see you here, and I really appreciate you coming out. My name is Fiona Jensen, and I am the executive director and founder of an organization on the Cape called Calmer Choice. And we exist to bring mindfulness programs into the schools on the Cape. Started about 3 years ago with a program of about 65 children, and then in the last year providing programming to over 2,000 children across Cape Cod, which is pretty amazing. I started Calmer Choice out of a need that I found in the local high school that my daughter was attending 3 years ago, and thought, you know, these kids just need to learn how to pause. They had like no pause, and the ability to just back off and realize that the crisis that they felt that was constant really wasn't there, or it was there, but there was a way that they could get kind of drop down below it. And so we started bringing mindfulness programs into the schools, and lo and behold, it's really taken off. We have Congressman Ryan here today because I actually met him over the summer. I was at a conference, and he was speaking. He was the keynote speaker. And at the end, there were questions, and there was a woman in the audience from New York City talking about her daughter's school. And how do you get a program like this into the schools? And I could feel my heart rate starting to pound and thinking, oh, I'm going to have to raise my hand. And so I raised my hand, and I got up and I said, you know what? You just create it. You know, and I shared the story of what we've created here on the Cape, which is fairly unusual, and sort of that was my introduction to Congressman Ryan. So just to kind of give you guys a little bit of background, Congressman Ryan was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 2002, and he's currently serving his 5th term representing Ohio's 17th Congressional District. In his 5 terms serving the people of Ohio, he has come to be known as a passionate statesman, a dutiful public servant, and a skilled orator. He's traveled the world meeting presidents and prime ministers. He presently serves as a member of the House Armed Services Committee, the House Budget Committee, as well as the co-chair of the House Addiction and Treatment Recovery Caucus. For me, this is a really, you know, we're here working with the START program, which is students achieving recovery together. Part of the issues that was going on at the high school that my daughter was attending was definitely related to alcohol and addiction. And so, you know, it's sort of a beautiful segue to have him here sort of with that understanding as well, that this is, you know, what if we could teach our kids how to find that space within themselves of calmness and peace so they wouldn't have to pick up. Like, what would that look like, you know? So, Congressman Ryan himself has helped to get mindfulness and social emotional programs established in several of the school districts that he's representing, and he's an outspoken advocate for promoting mindfulness practices and aid to addressing a variety of complex problems facing our nation. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Tim Ryan.
Everybody just chill out, okay? Good? Feel better? Can you hear me? Okay, we're good. Thank you. Thanks, Fiona. Appreciate it. It's great to be here. I was just sitting there looking. Bob brought me the Cape Cod Community College student newspaper. And there's an article in here about this event, and I was just thinking, I never thought I would be in the Cape Cod Community Student newspaper. So you never know where life is going to take you. And this is also a very special day. This is the first time, my first public appearance with a beard. And so this is pretty pathetic, but I saw Lincoln last night. Yeah. I said, I'm not shaving today. I'm gonna clean it up a little bit, channel a little Abraham Lincoln. I see a fellow beardsman right here. Yeah, good. So this is a very special day in so many ways. It's great to be here, and it's great to talk about mindfulness and the book, The Mindful Nation, that I wrote. And you know, I've, like a lot of people, meditated on and off. Very little. Grew up Catholic, and my mother, my Italian Catholic mother, and my Italian Catholic grandparents prayed the rosary all the time. So I grew up in a very kind of contemplative family where there were rosaries hanging on the chair and on the bedpost. And when my brother and I got our first car, hand-me-down 1981 Oldsmobile, the first thing that went in was a rosary around the rearview mirror. See, there's some Catholics in here, yes. And it was kind of funny when this all started. I was talking about writing a book, and I ended up at this conference as one of these keynote speakers with the whole mindfulness world there. It was called Creating a Mindful Society. John Kabat-Zinn was a keynote. Richie Davidson, Dr. Richie Davidson from Wisconsin, who's the scholar, really, in so many ways of what's going on with mindfulness and neuroscience and whatnot. And then I was one. And so it was Friday and Saturday night. It's in New York City, and it's Friday. I come in jeans. We're just hanging out. There's a big crowd there. And I see this woman who I know, who works in the mindfulness world. And she brought her sister. So we're talking and chit-chatting. And her sister's not really into mindfulness at all. She just came to the conference because it was in New York City. And she thought, I can go shopping and hang out a little bit. And so we started chit-chatting. And then we were all going to leave, and then the conference was over. We were all going to leave and go up the street and get a beer and something to eat and just kind of hang out. It's the end of a long day. And as we were leaving, me, the woman that I know, and her sister, we all start walking out with the group. And as we get outside, it's raining. So we're just going to hustle down. It's about 2 blocks down. We're hustling out and walking, and they break off. And then the big cloudburst comes. So we all just duck in to wherever we could to avoid the rain. So I duck in under a little awning, and they go into a parking garage. We're just going to let it pass. And so the 2 sisters start talking. And the sister that I don't know starts talking to the sister that I do know. And she says, did I just meet a congressman at this mindfulness conference? The sister said, yeah. He meditates? He practices mindfulness? She said, yeah. She said, he's writing a book about mindfulness? The sister said, yeah. The sister goes, will he still be a congressman once the book comes out? So yes, I just got reelected, so I am still, at least for 2 more years, 2-year contracts. So, you know, people do ask, how'd you get into it, and how are you a congressman, and all of this. And, you know, as I said, I grew up in this kind of contemplative world. I mean, we were, you know, it was raucous and single-parent home, and it wasn't, you know, utopia. But there was a side of my family that thought it was precious to take time to pray the rosary, to go to church. And I grew up in that environment. And when I got a little older, as I started on and off to practice some meditation myself, I really started to really appreciate that. And it wasn't a show, you know, especially for my grandparents. I mean, I would ride my bike down there as a kid. They lived a couple blocks down the street. And in the middle of the summer, I'd ride my bike down, and the TV was off, the radio was off. They were sitting in the living room praying the rosary. That was their time. It wasn't, I'm going to go to the Rosary Club at church and show everybody, hey, look, I'm praying the rosary. It was their own practice that they had. And so growing up there, I flirted on and off with all kinds of different types of meditation. And then, you know, a little bit of yoga here or there, played a lot of football. As you get old, you start doing yoga. You can't do anything else. You play too much football. But then ran for Congress, ended up getting involved in the politics. I was a state senator, then I ran for Congress at 28, 29 years old. Got into Congress, was young, was 29, was the youngest Democrat in Congress at the time. and had come off of 2 really long, tough campaigns. Got into Congress. At that point, Speaker Pelosi was leading the Democrats, and she asked me to take up this 30-something working group with someone else, congressman from Florida, and start going to the House floor every night and advocating for the Democratic viewpoint. This won't be a political speech, but just giving you some context. Although I am in Massachusetts, so I'm not going to and things got busier and busier, and I was running around the country, I was traveling, raising money, trying to help Democrats take the House back. Then in 2006, Democrats took the House back. My reward was to keep doing all that and then get on the Appropriations Committee, which is one of the 2 or 3 real big committees. You control all the government spending, and it's a pretty powerful committee to be on. It was quite an honor to get it. But that's a whole another load of work. So now in 2006, I'm still running around the country, still campaigning back at home, working in my own district. Now I'm on the Appropriations Committee. Here comes 2007, 2008, the big presidential election. I'm running around Ohio, campaigning, and it was about the summer of 2008. I was 35 years old, and I started doing a little bit more yoga because I was just scattered, just not kind of where I wanted to be. And I thought to myself, I'm going to be 35 years old, or I'm going to be 40 years old. If I keep at this pace, I will be 40 years old and I will be completely burnt out. There's no way I'm going to be able to keep this pace. And 35 is young. I mean, you're not, but you can't do it all. You can't do everything. And I said, I really need to jumpstart a meditation practice. I don't do it a lot, but I know when I do it, I can focus better, I'm nicer, I can concentrate, easier to get along with, some people say, my mother, but anyway, won't get into all that. And I just felt like I was improved performance. I could do things better. And so I was looking for a retreat to do. And I said, because I'm not going to be able to do it 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there. I need to get away, shut it down, and go on a retreat. So I started getting online, looking for a retreat. And I found the 5-day Power of Mindfulness retreat by John Kabat-Zinn. And it started 2 days after the November election. That is a sign from God. And I recognized John's name because a few years before, he sent his book, Coming to Our Senses, to every single member of Congress. And as I tease John, at least one read his book, or at least a good part of it. And so I was familiar with him, and so I go to this retreat, and no BlackBerries, no reading, no writing, nothing. Check it all at the door. You're coming in here for 5 days, and John just slowly walks you into more and more silence, deeper and deeper silence. So we get there, we sit a little bit, he teaches us how to, breathe, like you need to learn how to breathe, but actually you kind of do. Breathing, it's all right, it's paying attention to the breathing while we're doing it is the training. And so he goes through and he teaches this. And then the first day, I think he takes, like after breakfast, he says, we're not gonna talk to each other anymore for a while. And then you're gonna not talk to each other, not look at each other in the eye. And then you're gonna go to lunch. And you're gonna sit in the cafeteria, and you're not allowed to talk to anybody. Not allowed to look anybody in the eye. Now, that's pretty weird to sit in a big cafeteria style room and not talk to anybody. But what happens is you really do start to see what you are thinking about and what you are projecting out into the world. And you do see the steam come out of your coffee, and you do hear the forks and the knives clanking on the thing. I'm like, wow, there's a lot going on in here for no one talking. And it was really interesting because, in fact, we were just talking about this a little bit on the way up. It was really funny because when we come back from lunch then, John would say, okay, we're sitting in this big circle. I think there's like 50 or 60 of us. So what were you thinking about while you were having lunch? And this one guy said, I was watching this guy across the way. He was so mindful. I mean, he was just like in the present moment. He was right in the zone. The way he was drinking his coffee, and he was just right in the moment. And I said, why can't I be like that? I'm over here daydreaming. So John pointed to the guy that this gentleman just referred to, and he said, so what were you thinking about when he was watching you being so mindful? He says, I was daydreaming about something else, you know. I was wondering why I wasn't being mindful. And so, you know, he said, what goes on in your head when you just shut it down and you just stop? You get to see what influences, what biases you bring to the present moment. And so over time, over that week, he brought us into more and more silence. And at the end, there was a 36-hour period of silence, which, for those of you who aren't good at math, is a day and a half. And that's a long time. But, you know, slowly walks us more and more silence. And it was in the middle of this 36-hour period, you know, we would do a sitting meditation, and then we would do a walking meditation where you're just feeling your feet, feeling your breath, just being in the moment, just another way to train your mind to be in the present moment. And I really felt my mind and my body synchronize and be in the same place at the same time. And I played a lot of sports growing up, and the one thing it reminded me of was being in the zone. You know, so you hear about athletes being in the zone and flow, everything's, and it's effortless. It's just, there's no effort really there. And boom, you know, you were just in the present moment, and things were really clear, and it was a beautiful day. It was cold. I could see my breath coming out, and the cold air, and the leaves were changing. And it was like, wow, this is just a beautiful moment. And it hit me that you can actually train your mind to be in the zone. Light bulb went off. I mean, I knew I was there to relax and this, but the light bulb went off. You can train your mind to be in the zone. What a great thing. You know, and then your mind starts, oh, I'm enjoying the present moment. Wait, what am I doing here? You know, why am I not working? Shouldn't I be working? I mean, I got to pick up boats, I got to run again in 2 years, so I better get back home. What am I doing here? This is, you know, your mind just, that negative thought loop comes back. But this time, I saw it. I didn't get wrapped up into it. I saw it happening. I saw this negative thought loop going. And I could go back to my breath and ground myself. And you realize you are not your thoughts. You can very easily get caught up. And that's how we get stressed out of our minds, because we get caught up in these thought loops, much of which never happens. And shortly after that, I thought, this needs to be in our schools. I mean, there is nothing more, and I actually got angry for a second that no one taught me this when I was younger. So here I am at 35 just figuring this out. Where were the guidance counselors, you know, where were the teachers? But it was just such an amazing thing. But what more fundamental skill does a child need than the ability to control their attention? How to mobilize your attention span and put it on the periodic table of elements. I've given a lot of speeches. I've never had such a chance. I had to use this. I didn't know when I was going to use it, but I knew I was going to use this thing. And I don't know what any of that is. If I didn't watch Breaking Bad, I would barely know what that is. You watch Breaking Bad? Oh, yeah. Oh, it's like a late one then. Anyway, that's another lecture, that whole, yeah. But the ability to mobilize your attention span and put it where you want it, and to be able to hold it there and sustain it for a scientific equation that needs solved, or a math problem, or all of those things. And you know, I was doing a lot of work with veterans who were coming back from the war, and how much I thought this could be helpful to help address a lot of the trauma, the wellness, health, how many problems stress causes. So, excuse me. So that's how I started immediately thinking. And after the retreat, I walked up to see John Kabat-Zinn, who's got a funny story of when he heard a congressman was coming to his retreat. He thought it was going to be some old congressman that had a lot of problems. politics throughout their life and was now coming for some kind of redemption. And I walked in at 35 years old. But he said, there's a lot of people that I want. I said, why don't we get this in the schools? This needs to be in healthcare. This needs to be here, there. He says, well, there's a lot of people doing a lot of this work. It's not nearly where it needs to be, but if you're really interested in helping, we don't have a congressman right now who's into this stuff. So about a month later, I came out to Boston to see him and spent a night with him and his wife talking about this. And he basically told me where to go and who to visit. And one of the first visits I made was to go out to Wisconsin and see Dr. Richie Davidson, who works at the University of Wisconsin. And I went out there on Super Bowl Sunday in January. Now, I was a quarterback in high school in Ohio, okay? We don't leave Ohio on Super Bowl Sunday to go see a neuroscientist in Wisconsin, okay? That's not part of the plan. But I did, because I was just so motivated about what the potential for this could be for my community, but our country. And just when you think about all of the challenges that we have, that the average teenager sends 3,000 to 4,000 text messages a month, the number of TV stations, the political talk shows, the noise, the negativity, the fear, the anger, the post 9/11 America. I mean, all of these things, I feel like, could be addressed with a little touch of mindfulness. And so I was extremely motivated to go out and meet the people that were doing this work. And that kind of agenda that John sent, go meet this person, go meet that person, was the beginning of a Mindful Nation out of the book. Because when I started to meet these people, they were so inspiring. They're like pioneers on the cutting edge. I mean, they're doing it. They're, the whole idea that the last century was about us going to the moon and conquering outer space, and the idea that, maybe our job now is to go inward. And maybe that's the great American journey today, is for us to go inward and to meet these people who are doing the neuroscience, cutting edge, who are doing the educational program, cutting edge, who are doing the wellness programs, cutting edge, and all of these new programs, and to have had the personal experience of how I know this will help students. I don't need it to be proven. I need it to be proven because I got to go sell it to people who've never been to a 5-day power mindfulness retreat. So I need, we've got to continue to study this stuff. I got church bells ringing. No, it's but how do we begin this process? And so I wanted to write a book. And a lot of people said that I shouldn't do it. It's a little risky. You sure you want to get into this? You want this to be your first book? Why don't you do a autobiography? I'm like, my life's not that interesting. And I knew what it could potentially do and how helpful it can be. And I think those of you who are involved in this work, you know what it can do. And so I feel like my responsibility is to help ramp this thing up and speed it up, because we don't have any time to waste. We have a lot of issues in the country that need to be dealt with. One of the things that really helped me, it convinced me that this was the way to go, is when I started to see the science and when I saw the brain science, because I knew in America that it's nice to have a little science backing you up when you're trying to sell something. It's nice to have some evidence to start to sell to people. And the science that I was seeing and understanding with how the brain worked was very persuasive for me. I mean, it further convinced me of what was happening here. So for those of you who don't know, we've got a million different parts of our brain, but you have this older part of your brain called your amygdala. And your amygdala, when you're under a lot of stress, gets really, really activated. And part of what happens, you go into fight, flight, or freeze. And your brain, that part of your brain, starts to take over. And there's another part of your brain called your prefrontal cortex, which is up here, and where we have all our executive functions. So you have your working memory, you have your ability to kind of control your emotions, your attention span, decision making, all done up here. But this gets shut off when you're under high levels of stress. Your amygdala takes over, and the information you take in does not ever make its way up to your prefrontal cortex. And it turns out, in situations like that, it's really helpful to have your prefrontal cortex working. And that's fine. We evolved to have this fear system, which was really good. So here comes a dinosaur. I'm getting the hell out of here. That's a good thing. We're still here because of this system that we have. How mindfulness can help us calm the amygdala down. And think of all these kids in all these schools, 30, 40, 50% that don't even graduate from high school, primarily because they live in abusive relationships, they live in violent neighborhoods, they have trauma, and not to sugarcoat it, most of them probably could be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. Especially when you're little and you're getting raised in that, and your brain's not fully developed. Of course that trauma is going to have a lot of damage on your brain. And so to teach the kids how to calm their amygdala down and then be able to access their prefrontal cortex. I mean, the human genome says we're all 99.9% alike. So what happens to these 30% of these kids that can't make their way out? Well, we know we've been trying, and we can't always do what we need to do to make sure that they're safe and comforted and in a good household. We'll try. To me, when I saw mindfulness, it's a perfect gift to give, to empower these young kids, and to be able to really train their minds and be able to focus and concentrate so that they could do better in school. And to see how that would benefit in so many other ways. In some of these school programs, Goldie Hawn, some of you may know her, she's got a great social and emotional learning and mindfulness program called Mind Out. So I go to one of her schools in Virginia. After I got over the fact that I'm walking through the school with Goldie Hawn, I had this dream last night. I was in a school with Goldie Hawn. And I was like, okay, this is weird. Anyway, so we're walking down, it's a grade school, elementary school, and we're walking down this hallway, and I look up on the wall, and it looks like a traditional art project. It's a paper plate, and there's yarn and all this stuff. I'm walking down, it's cute, and I look a little closer, and on the paper plate, it says, your amygdala. I breathed a little bit, got back, and on the left side it had your amygdala when you were fearful, and the yarn was red, and then it had on the other side your amygdala when you're calm and centered, and the yarn was blue or something like that. But they were beginning to teach these kids how their brain worked. And we walked into a classroom, and one of the teachers, so the teacher, we're sitting in the back, the teacher says, okay, somebody show us what your amygdala is like. And I barely knew what the amygdala was before I got into all this. What your amygdala is like when you're, when someone pushes you on the playground, and some girl got up and, acted crazy, and we all laughed, and she sat back down, and the teacher said, okay, now who wants to show us what your amygdala is like when you're practicing your mindfulness or when you're calm? Some kids, a beautiful little girl stood up and just... And that was so powerful to give these kids the information of how their body and mind is working. And how they know what's happening. I'm not losing my mind. Someone just pushed me on the playground, my amygdala got all jacked up, but now my teacher taught me how to calm it down. I mean, that's a fun to think about. That's a fundamental skill. That needs to be the first thing we teach a kid. The basics. You play sports, you play basketball, you learn how to dribble and, pass class, dribble through chairs, and slowly build up the fundamentals. So why wouldn't we begin to think about recreating an education system that begins with dealing with your amygdala, your prefrontal cortex, and becoming aware of the emotions that trigger that stress and whatnot. There was a study that came out, probably been 6 months, maybe more, out of Harvard. Sarah Lazar, where she studied the amygdala, and after 8 weeks of a mindfulness-based stress reduction course, the amygdala, a certain area of the amygdala, got thinner because the activity, the stress was reduced, so there was less activity in the amygdala, and that part of the amygdala actually got thinner. So there's now studies that are beginning to suggest that this is really reshaping your brain. And there's a whole new field developing called neuroplasticity. We used to think our brains were hard. I know when I was young, they said, well, you have to learn a foreign language when you're young because your brain gets hard the older you get. Makes sense. I don't know. Why wouldn't it? But now we're finding out that your brain is always changing. It's actually plastic. They call it neuroplasticity. It's changing in relation to the experiences that you're having. So if you're practicing mindfulness, it does certain things to your brain. If you're always distracted on technology and moving around, it does other things. If you're always in fear and angry, certain things happen to your amygdala. And if you're not, your brain will shift into a more compassionate, centered way. So this was fascinating to me, and to be able to go out and promote mindfulness and have the science behind it, I thought was really, really helpful for the education part. Obviously, the veterans part is near and dear to all of our hearts, and so I thought that was really helpful and could be potentially very helpful. And there are a lot of mindfulness programs springing up now, alternative therapies for vets now too, that is needed now more than ever. And then I started to learn about stress. We all know, I remember my grandmother saying, you worry me sick. It's that Italian guilt thing she had. But it's true. You worry yourself sick. And it's the stress. And so I started to listen to some of these scientists talk about stress and how it can really be debilitating and how much it can hurt your nervous system and hurt your body and lead to high blood pressure and ulcers and type 2 diabetes and all of these other things that are caused by stress. And what one doctor told me is that mindfulness, when you get really stressed out, you really get overheated. Your body gets inflamed. It gets hot. And that mindfulness can actually act as a cooling agent for your body by calming yourself down and reducing your stress levels. Your body will become less inflamed, and therefore you'll be a little bit healthier. So when you think about this in the context of a United States Congressman who is interested in public policy, and you start thinking about how we need to be competitive as a country, and how we only have, 300 plus million people in the country, and we're competing against other countries, and really you're competing against the globe, but you're competing against your kids and us and the kids and students and the workforce that come through this university. We're competing against 1.3 or 4 billion people in China. We're competing against 1.3 or 4 billion people in India. And we're only 300 plus million people here in the United States. So as a policymaker, we all as a country, we need to figure out what we're going to do to stay competitive. And one thing is for sure, you can't be losing 30 or 40% of your kids not even graduating from high school. That is a recipe for disaster. We need all 300 million, or whatever the workforce number may be. We need everyone on the field playing, creating the next generation of alternative renewable energy, doing the next generation of scientific research, doing the next generation of educational innovations. All of these things need need to get done, and they're not going to get done if we're losing 30% of our kids. I mean, there's all kinds of moralistic reasons why that's wrong, but just from a pure economic standpoint, it's a waste of resources, a waste of human resources, the most precious resource we have. And then to improve the performance of those in the workforce now and improve that puts us at a competitive advantage if we can all begin to deal with this world in a different way. When you look at healthcare costs, you know, the healthcare bill that was passed, it's a great thing. I mean, we've got, everyone in America has healthcare now, or will in 2014, and everyone will have prevention, and that's great. You can go in for screenings, you know, without much of a copay, if any at all. That's a great thing. But from this vantage point, I want to say that if you're catching cancer, that's still too far downstream. Like, what's causing the cancer? What's causing the heart disease? What's causing the high blood pressure? So if we can begin to implement mindfulness in a way where we're training our teachers, we're training our doctors, we're training our healthcare workforce, we're training family caregivers, we're training our first responders, we can begin to change the culture of our country. And I don't think this is pie in the sky. I mean, if you think about the kid that's going to school now and getting taught mindfulness, and a lot of these programs, there's a parental component. So the parent is involved, the kid's involved. If your doctor gets trained in mindfulness and you go to your doctor and you have high blood pressure and your doctor says, I'm going to teach you something that I learned in medical school, and I want you to do it for 20 minutes a day, do it for 2 weeks, and come back before I put you on any medication. You know, let's try this. Now, I'm not saying I won't have to put you on medication at some point, and maybe there'll be a dietary thing or something, but why don't you try this? And then plan B will be medication, not plan A. And you could, that same person whose son or daughter's learning in school, and they went to the parental class, and now their doctor's telling them to do it, and there's a neighbor who was in the Marines, because they're doing a lot of this now in the military, moved back home, and they're practicing mindfulness, and they learned it in the Marines. You begin to see how this can start to really infiltrate the culture and really get embedded in the culture, and hopefully not too long a period of time. So lastly, let me just say, you know, a lot of people, as I mentioned, say, it feels weird to scratch my face, but just to let you inside here a little bit. I'm in public. Don't tell my mother. Unshaven, okay? We're into the nuns at Catholic school. Anyway. The one thing to me that's really exciting is when you look at who's doing this now. Obviously, you know, me being here as a congressman, it doesn't seem weird to me because it was my own personal experience and I'm here. But when you look at when you're trying to talk to people about mindfulness and, you know, why it's important, why you think it can be helpful, and you see that General Mills is doing it with their corporate execs, you see that Target's doing it, you see that, you know, a lot of these Silicon Valley companies like Google and others are beginning to get mindfulness embedded into their corporate culture. When you think about Phil Jackson, the great basketball coach, taught this to Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and you think about the United States Marine Corps, they're using this to train a lot of the Marines and other aspects of the military. When you look at all the VAs that are doing it now, you look at the schools that are doing it now, you look who's doing the research. Harvard, Yale, UCLA, Stanford, University of Virginia, University of Miami, Florida, University of Michigan, Ohio State. You go to the Cleveland Clinic Wellness Center, they tell you to reduce your animal protein and meditate. You know, it's the Cleveland Clinic. And people say, well, you know, why would you go do this? Why are you talking about this? I'm like, this is not a big deal. We were talking about breathing here, okay? Breathing in, breathing out. You know, I'm not out on a limb Okay? We all do it, for the most part. And this is just a way of saying, I want to begin to try to discipline my mind so that when I go out into the world, that I will have more of a choice as to where I place my attention span. And if there's one thing we need to teach our kids as we move forward, the technology's not going to stop. You know, iPhone 6 is coming, iPhone 7, it'll be iPhone 39 pretty soon, an iPad, this and that, and we'll have all of this technology. That is not going to stop. The world is not going to stop. The question is, are we going to slow down enough of us, to say we need to start teaching our children how to be in that world? You know, how are you going to be in that world? And that's what coaches have been teaching players in all kinds of different sports for years and years and years. There's going to be chaos on the football field. There's going to be chaos on the basketball court. There's going to be chaos in your life. How are you going to be in the middle of that? And the high performers are the ones, the quarterbacks that you watch that could just sit in a pocket and there's people breathing down their neck, but they're in the zone. And I think we need to teach our kids how to be in the zone. Not for sports, that's just a way to learn how to do it in real life, but how to be in this world with all of this craziness trying to distract you, bells and whistles everywhere. And how are you in that world? Are you present in that world, or are you distracted in that world? And when I'm talking about this to parents, what parent is going to be against you saying, as a legislator or a teacher or a superintendent, I want to teach your kid mental discipline. I want your kid to be able to focus and concentrate. What parent's going to say, no, 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 I don't want that for my kid? You know? You see it all the time. And I think we have an opportunity with mindfulness, because it's secular, because the science is there, because these major institutions are supporting it, researching it, and practicing it, to really shift our society in a really fundamental way. And I thank all of you for being here to be a part of it. Thank you. I'm happy to take a few questions. You can just scream them out.
First of all, although you're late coming into November, November is Male Health Awareness Month, by which men show their support by growing mustaches. So,
Oh, wow, I heard that last
yeah, so good on you coming at that. As a family physician,
So wait a minute. A beard counts, or no? It's strictly mustache?
Well,
Because I'm not doing a mustache. I can't pull that off.
just go in the Abe Lincoln.
Yeah. I gotta get rid of my mustache, right?
You do what you can.
Have you seen Lincoln? Has anyone seen this? Yeah. That's unbelievable. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I just wanted to also highlight that recent studies have shown that as little as 2 to 3 minutes a day, not necessarily 20 minutes a day, 2 to 3 minutes a day are making measurable physiologic differences when people can actually get achieve a mindful state for just that short period of time. I don't minimize that. I mean, my toothbrush counts 2 minutes, and I'm swearing it's broken every day because 2 minutes is a really long time. 3 minutes is no joke. 20 minutes is insurmountable to many people in today's world. So you do what you can. And
Right.
so supporting that kind of thing and recommending it and trying to practice it as a person in 2013 almost. 2 to 3 minutes a day, if that's what you can do, that's what you can do. 20 minutes is, more
Yeah.
better, but
And you could do this in so many different ways. I mean, I could sit on a cushion and do my thing. That's my thing. But I like to run, and I love running now since I've been practicing mindfulness, because it's such a meditation, and to get in your body and to really just be in your body, and you can swim. I love playing golf now. I mean, I always liked it, but I stunk at it, so I would get really frustrated. But now that with mindfulness practice, it's a lot of fun, because you more how to let go of the last shot that you put into the woods. So it doesn't matter what you do. You don't have to do it one way. It's for whatever floats your boat. But try to recognize that present moment awareness is there, and it's nothing to be grabbed at. It's already here. I mean, that's the big shift. You're not, as Americans, you don't have to go out and get anything. You don't have to go out and buy anything. You know, it's here. It's part of being a human being. You have awareness. And you can do it in this room. You're like, I'm going to be aware of Fiona's. I'm going to be aware of the periodic table of elements. I'm going to be aware of someone I met at lunch today. You know, and I can shift my awareness. So you can do, you know, you can, I mean, I obviously am biased, but I think you need to sit and quiet, and that's, I think, a really good way. Part of what a lot of scientists are saying now, too, is we need to really ramp up the research on this. There's enough evidence now to say, let's put some real money behind this and find out exactly what the best way to do it is, and how long, and how it should be presented, and, you know, let's research this. Let's figure this out. You know, that's what we are. I mean, that's what Americans do. We try to take these challenges and try to unravel them. Yes?
Do you see the research really coming about, given that there's not a clear, like a pharmaceutical company to benefit from that research? I mean, historically, a lot of research has been done when somebody stands to, you know, gain a lot of money from the outcome. And I think one of the challenges that this mindfulness practice has is, as you say, you don't need to go out and do anything, buy anything. Do you see that progress, and do you see a way, also, the other question that I have is around Congress itself and Washington and that culture. Are you seeing some progress there?
First, there has been money invested from National Institutes of Health, their alternative arm, that Richard Davidson and others have received grants to do some of these studies. So I think primarily it's going to come from the public side. But a lot of the research that pharmaceutical companies, you know, pick off, a lot of that legwork has been done through the public side. They come in and get the patent and then go out and change it or add it and make some dough off it. But this is why I think we need a strong and vibrant, bold research initiative in the country. And for things like this and other things that are out there, this is obviously my focus. So hopefully from the public side we can continue to, not just National Institutes of Health, there are pockets in the Department of Education for educational innovation. These things need to be funded too, social emotional learning, and you know, when you understand how the brain works, nothing else is going to matter. Like, no other educational program you're teaching is going to matter because they're not paying attention to you. You know, so we got to get, you know, back to the blocking and tackling, the dribbling, the fundamentals. As far as Washington goes, you know, it's complicated. But in all honesty, there was a foundation out in Boulder, Colorado, that bought 535 Mindful Nation books and gave them to every member of the House and the Senate. And some have read them, read the book. Some of my colleagues read the book and have come up to me and said, this is really important, and one was really excited, telling everyone else to read it. But I think there's an openness now in the country that there wasn't 5 years ago. Definitely wasn't 10 or 15 years ago. And even 5 years ago, people are looking now. You see it with the vets, you see it with the military, to where they're looking for these alternative therapies. And so I think, you know, Congress is sometimes a very difficult institution to penetrate. But again, I think there is an openness there. And we're starting a little mindfulness group that I'm going to kind of head up and slowly try to get everybody to slow down a little bit. Yeah.
Then why is there opposition to all of this? I mean, what parent wouldn't want their kid to have mental discipline? And is it in the presentation that people will say, not for my kid? And I hear that people think it's religion and brainwashing. What do you run into?
I tell you, I've not run into a problem in, knock on wood, in Youngstown or Warren City Schools, where I got $1 million grant, federal grant from the Department of Education, because I was on the appropriations committee. You know, I didn't tell anybody about it either. You know, I was like, let's get this up and running. But it's been online now, it's been all over the media. Not gotten any resistance at all locally. A few people have said a few things, but basically, we say, come and see what we're doing. Like I said, it's breathing, you know, it's emotional awareness. And so there hasn't been a real problem. I think most people don't even know about it. I mean, I'm more concerned about not enough people knowing about it than I am facing some resistance. Look, if there's parents and the school board that they don't want it in their schools, what are you going to do? Let's get it in the schools that want it. And I'm confident that it will change the mood of the school. It will change the number of detentions. It will change the educational attainment levels. Kids will be nicer. And then the school district that's not doing it at some point is going to say, why aren't we like that school? You want to say something?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to say that in reality, it's not, we don't get a lot of resistance from the parents. I would say, you know, when we do ask for consent, we probably get one, you know, we've had maybe 2 or 3 parents who've opted out, which is fine. Our biggest issue is funding than anything else. And I think that's the piece that, you know, we're working with Tufts University right now, just Calmer Choice, but a lot of programs around the country are working at research so that we can show the results on the other end. The more, you know, the reality is mindfulness in schools is only about 10 years old, and it takes a long time to get longitudinal studies done, you know, and so even what we're doing right now is just an outcomes process. It's not even full-fledged research. So it's just a matter of time, and I think, you know, as Congressman Ryan was saying, because the brain research is behind it, there, you know, the receptivity in the school systems overall has been very positive. So I think it's just a matter of, you know, for me, oftentimes the board actually reins me in because you know, a lot of schools would like this. You know, it's just a matter that they don't necessarily have the money right now to fund it. So I think as we get better at promoting it and coming up with data, they'll have more information then to put into a grant to ask us to come in, which is beginning to happen. So.
My goal in the next 4 years is to really get the Obama administration to get engaged on this. Because, like Richie Davidson has said, we need a 10-year longitudinal study on healthcare. You know, just to figure out what the benefits, what the cost savings would be on healthcare. And I think there needs to be something similar in the field of education. And that's something that the administration, I think, could really be helpful. I mean, those budgets are big, but, you know, you are the president. And you can identify pockets of money to do these long-term studies that need to be done. And I think it is entirely appropriate for the public sector to do that. I'm going to go to the man with the beard up there.
You mentioned this kind of sense of national competition, which for better or worse certainly exists, but where do other countries stand on that? I mean, is there other research being done internationally? And if so, is it more or less than we do?
I don't think there's a country that stands out in my mind. I think in Bhutan, they have like this gross national happiness index that is the equivalent of GNP, GDP, and it's about quality of life. You know, are you happy? And that maybe should be a factor in how we live our life. Does it make you happy? So I know there's studies that I see percolate out of the UK every now and again, but I don't really know, to be honest with you, if any one country is like way ahead of the game on this. I mean, I think there are countries that keep, like, I think it is Bhutan, I'm not completely sure, but that focus on it. And this could be very helpful for all countries. And so again, it's a human capacity. And obviously Asia has a long history with this. Germany, I know, has a significant mindfulness population and initiatives that are going on there. So, right here.
I just had a question. You talk about elementary schools and high schools. Have you thought about spreading this program to colleges?
Yeah, there are schools who have. I remember, I think it was the University of Minnesota. I was at a conference and some professor was talking about a mindfulness course that she had, and it was packed, and they had to add another one because the kids in college, you know, it's the stressful time to go to college. I mean, it's the academic challenges are huge, and the financial challenges are huge today, and that's very stressful. And then when you start realizing, well, all the stress is making my amygdala get a little crazy. Maybe we should be teaching our kids something very early on in college to deal with it. So I think those are kind of case by case now, college by college, but I think you starting something here would be a great idea. I'd volunteer to do that. Awesome, Burlington. Yeah.
Thank you. Could you comment on any similar push and response for yoga? Thank you.
I like doing yoga. I've got a lot of friends that do yoga. I don't know exactly where the yoga research is today compared to mindfulness. I would guess you would get, I mean, yoga is very you have to be very mindful to practice yoga. It's a physical component. But I just don't think there's the research for yoga that there is for mindfulness. If I was going to write a book on, you know, a yoga nation instead of a mindful nation, I don't know, I wouldn't know where to go. I don't know if there'd be enough research to put the book together. I may be completely off base and there may be stuff out there that I've not seen, but I just don't think there's, but that would be another thing that we would need to research. You know, what do our physical education courses look like in our schools today? You know, you want your kid playing dodgeball, or do you want your kid, you know, actually learning techniques that will make them healthier and increase their ability to focus and concentrate, balance their emotions, reduce the cortisol that goes through their veins, the stress hormones and whatnot. You know, so that would be, those are things that we should be stoking the fire of and demanding. And part of this, I don't usually talk about this, but there's a whole yoga votes movement going on in the country. And they're finding, I think they're calling them ambassadors to yoga studios. And they're organizing the yoga studios to go out and vote and to volunteer, to knock on doors. I mean, the campaigns today have become so precise as far as identifying voters and getting them to the polls. And spending a lot of time identifying who's going to vote for this particular candidate or that particular candidate, making sure you get your people to the polls. And so the yoga community now, Sean Horn, who's a big yoga teacher, and a lot of others, have put this whole Yoga Votes initiative together with ambassadors in yoga studios. We did a big event in Cleveland. I think it was in the middle, it was on Saturday in the middle of an Ohio State Buckeyes football game. And there were like 60 people there. And I went up and, you know, talked to them, and they were organized and going out. So, to me, that you can't separate being a politician, being civically minded, wanting this to be in the schools, and then voting's over there somewhere. To me, it's all, because I wrote this book, for me it all came together. My practice and my work. But if you're in the yoga and education, or you're in the mindfulness and education, and you really believe in it, then you better run for the school board or find one of your friends to go run for the school board, and you help them get elected, and you get the yoga community in this school district together, mobilized, registered to vote. I mean, I go to these yoga conferences, and there's yogis who are like, I'm not, you know, I go to my mat to have bliss, you know, reduce my stress, and to get away from that stuff. You know, and it's not, we're all connected. You can't separate, you know? That's why I never, the 99%, 1%, I got it, I understood it, but you know what? It's just one more way of dividing the country. And we're not divided. We're all together. And if we don't understand that, we're not going to get past this impasse that we have now. So that was a little riff there, sorry. Yeah.
Like the past 20 years or so, there's been a lot of labeling of like young kids having, like they say they have ADHD or ADD, and these doctors.
Can you say that again? I wasn't paying attention. Yes.
But these doctors are handing out prescriptions such as Adderall and Concerta a lot, and I think at a young age, it's really, I don't think it's that great for them to do that, considering their brains are still forming. And I was just wondering what your thoughts on that were, and if your approach would be more suitable for kids at that age.
I think it's a better starting point. I'm not a doctor, and maybe there are kids who at some point would need Ritalin or Adderall or whatever. But to me, after having a personal practice and understanding mindfulness, even seeing how yoga and breathing, deep breathing can be helpful, I would start there. Let's start with something that doesn't have any side effects, and then work our way down. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, so look for probably a lot of people in here that have a better answer than me. But to me, we should start with mindfulness. We should start with alternative therapies. We should start with yoga, and then work our way down. And we should study it. And we should make sure before we start getting our kids on these prescription drugs that they may need the rest of their lives. And I think it could be really helpful. And it's the emotional intelligence, too, that we're starting to really understand. These kids who feel secure and comforted and loved, like the things we always knew were important, we're now beginning to like study them and sparing out. Yeah, you've got a kid that's really feels safe and loved and cared about. They do better in school. Like, no kid. You know? Of course. So, I'm glad you're thinking about that, though. Because it's really important. And the backside of that is how much money we're spending on these drugs. You know? I mean, I could teach you a breathing technique, I could teach you mindfulness, and it could potentially be very helpful. Or we can put you on a drug that you will have to take from the time you're 6 years old until, like, when do you stop thinking, I don't really need to concentrate anymore? Like, when does that stop? You know? It doesn't, so you can take it forever. Yeah.
I'd just like to add to a little bit of everything that you said today.
Okay, just don't take it.
Yeah, real quick. Well, I'm at 30%, you know, as a child of PTSD, I could basically consider myself having. I have been given all of the counseling, the techniques, everything throughout my entire life to fix something. And so to go beyond that, so this summer I did the 8-week course, and I am currently a student here. You know, I'm 33 years old, and I'm currently a student finally for the first time in my life. And I noticed the differences in the effects from when I took the 8-week course to the way that I walked, the way that I breathe. I have a yoga practice as well. It helps me with my everything else that I do in life, my silver coaching, and my being able to focus and study all day, every single day. So, like, I'm a product of like this type of work, breathing, focusing on breath actually works.
That's great. our teacher. Why don't you start a campus, city?
Yeah, Joe.
Just post something up and bring John Cabot-Sent's CD.
Oh, we got Jim Hirschman in the audience.
Yeah.
Actually, I do want to follow up by mentioning we have something called Workshop Wednesdays here at Cape Cod Community College. This coming Wednesday at 2, I'll be leading a workshop on mindfulness meditation. Wednesday at 2, South 111.
There you go. Awesome. Okay.
I work here as well.
Thank you, Jim.
It was the guy with the beard. Come full circle.
Excellent. All right, so listen, I'm going to sort of wrap it up because we need to get Congressman Ryan out of here by 4, and I want to give people a chance, if you bought a book, for him to come, for him to sign it for you. I want to thank you on behalf of Calmer Choice for making the venture down to Cape Cod. It really is very like an honor and a privilege to, you know, when I sent you that email, I sort of sent it and went, uh-oh. And then he said yes, and I went, uh-oh. This is how this whole thing has been created. But really, it's an honor and a privilege, and I just want to thank you on behalf of by all means, come on down.